Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name's Carly, and this is Go Ahead Tell Me. Today, we're here with writer and director Andrew Chung to talk a little bit about his new film and a grassroots organization he has recently started. Andrew, thanks for being here today. I'd love to get us started by getting to know you a little bit and your journey to being a filmmaker.
Hi, Carly. Great to be here. Yeah, I mean, I think I've been making films probably about 10 years. I've been in the film industry for about 15. I started, I studied screenwriting in film school in Vancouver. And I worked in development and then distribution, and then I just kind of dove headfirst into production and just started making my own projects. My first big project was a web series that I had crowdfunded, and that
Mm.
was my education in a lot of ways. But ever since then, I've just been making short films, and now my latest is my first feature film called White Elephant.
Mm. Yeah, I'm excited about that film. I was reading a lot about it. I was unable to get a link to list or to watch it in the last week, but I know it's in the festival circuit as of right now, right?
Yeah. We just had our LA premiere in at New Filmmakers LA, and yeah, so we've traveled quite Canada, but yeah, we're making our way through the U.S. right now. So hopefully it continues.
Yeah, I saw you guys just had like the first in-person screening. Is that right?
Yeah, we had our first. Yeah, I mean, this pandemic has been rough for us, but
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, we had our first in-person screening. It was at a drive-in theater in Toronto, my home city. But yeah, it was literally our first in-person screening. So it was very surreal because we never really got to even see each other, the cast and crew, since we had filmed the movie.
Oh,
So it had
wow.
been, yeah, so it had been quite a long time. So we had a little bit of a reunion of sorts, but it was great. Yeah.
That's awesome. That must have been exciting to finally see it with like a crowd and everything.
Oh yeah, like, and just to see it on the big screen, right? Like,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I've been looking at it on my computer for so long that I hadn't actually seen it on a large screen. So that was really fun.
Yeah, that must have been a great experience to finally get to have that.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about the story of White Elephant? It sounds like it's an amazing story of a like Canadian-born Indian teenage
Yeah.
girl.
Sure. Yeah. So the film is basically about a South Asian teenager. So she's 16 years old, and she's growing up in a suburb of Toronto, which is a predominantly South Asian neighborhood.
Mm,
And so what happens is, in the film, she meets a white boy that enters the neighborhood for the first time, and she has a crush on him, and he reminds her of all the teen heartthrobs that she sees on TV, because her character is kind of obsessed with movies and TV. And yeah, and it's just kind of her journey towards self-love when she kind of navigates this crush in the midst of being torn between her brown and black friends and his white friends. So
mm.
but yeah, so it's a coming of age story.
What was the inspiration behind telling that story for you?
I mean, a lot of it is based on my personal high school experiences. I grew up in that same suburb of Scarborough in Toronto, and
Mm,
it was a mostly brown and black neighborhood. My school was mostly brown and black. So I lifted a lot of those experiences in terms of race.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, I think, like, even Pooja's experience, the main character, it was similar to mine. Like, I was like heavily into movies and TV, which is why I'm a
mhm.
filmmaker today. So I was influenced quite a bit by what I was seeing on TV. So I hadn't personally been exposed to many white people growing up, which was kind of like a flipped experience for many of those in the Western world. But so I kind of wanted to explore, like, how that affects your psyche, like growing up
Mhm.
as a teenager, and what that kind of does to your, esteem, your self-esteem, and your identity. So the film kind of explores that quite a bit.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I lifted a lot from my own experience.
Yeah, I loved seeing the a film that had the perspective of a South Asian
Yeah.
person as the main character when I was watching videos and reading about it. It's a perspective you don't see very much of in media right now.
No, not at all. I mean, I think that's partly why I had chosen to do that. My background as well, like my parents were born and raised in India. So my
Oh, okay.
household, yeah, my household was very, we carried a lot of the customs and traditions of Indian culture in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
We were kind of a Chinese Indian hybrid household. So I was pretty familiar with the culture, and obviously I grew up around a lot of South Asians in my neighborhood.
Hmm.
So that's why it was fairly easy for me to relate to and portray that community. I did collaborate with the community quite a bit and ensured, of course, that I represented it authentically as much as possible.
Right.
But I did do a lot of personal research outside of my own personal experiences.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's what inspired me to specifically write about South Asian characters. And of course, like you said, we don't see it very much on TV and film, so it was something I wanted.
Yeah, it was very like refreshing to see that, to see a different perspective being represented. I did read in your blog that you had mentioned that this project was one of the hardest you've had to do so far.
Yeah.
What about this was so challenging?
I mean, it's always the same answer, which is just it's money, right?
Yeah,
It's always lack of money that makes every project very difficult. And I think this project in particular, we were grossly underfunded, and I think I was probably overly ambitious in making it a feature in terms of the resources that we had. So I kind of like squeezed as much as I could out of what we had. But
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, like I'm happy with what we accomplished with the resources that were at our disposal. So but yeah, I think that's what led to the difficulty and stress on set. Hopefully, that doesn't show on screen, but yeah, definitely.
That makes sense. It's always a difficult thing for especially independent filmmakers is the funding.
Yeah, always.
But I did see you guys have won quite a few awards through this year with the festivals and everything. That must have felt pretty amazing for your first feature.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised, and I did not expect it at all. So we won quite a few awards in Canada. We won Best Feature at the Real World Film Festival and the Vancouver Asian Film Festival. I also won Best Writer Director at the Real World Film Festival. So
Wow.
yeah, it was really exciting, and I'm happy that it got some accolades, especially since it was a very small film, but it
Hmm.
managed to resonate with a lot of people, which we were happy with.
Yeah, it's great to see a different perspective being rewarded as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think times are changing, right? Like I
Hmm.
think people want to see these stories, and people are interested in these stories, and so I guess I'm experiencing some of that.
Yeah, that was actually something I wanted to ask you is like what changes you're hoping to see in the film industry and how you hope to be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously things are definitely getting better from when I first started in this
Hmm.
industry. I think, the young people starting in film today, the opportunities are much more than I had coming up. So I've seen a lot of positive changes.
Hmm.
But there's still a long way to go with it. I think we're doing a lot of catch up in terms of what our reality actually looks like in the real world, right? I think
Right.
the diversity that we see in real life we're very much used to, but film and entertainment is doing some catch up there. Like we still need stronger representation overall. So
Hmm.
but yeah, I think I'm positive that things are changing. So and I tried to do as much as I could, on my side as well. I started the Asian Canadian Film Alliance here in Canada,
Hmm.
co-founded co-founded the Asian Canadian Film Alliance, and yeah, we're trying to build initiatives here and have discussions about what we can do better and how we can improve the landscape for us. So Yeah.
Yeah, I read a little bit about the alliance, and just it's relatively new, correct? Is that right?
Yeah, we only launched about 2 months ago. So, there's still a lot of work for us to be done. But our first event is actually September 1st.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we're going to be holding a panel event called Achieving Equity for Asian Canadians in Media.
Mm.
And we have a panel of Asian Canadian artists and producers that to discuss, what we can do better.
Hmm.
It includes people like Warren Sonata, who is the Directors Guild of Canada national president,
Oh wow.
as well as Jean Yoon, who is one of the stars of Kim's Convenience,
Mm.
and as well as other independent producers and filmmakers in Canada who are, veterans here, but,
Hmm.
they don't have the platforms that we'd hope we would have. So, we're going to discuss what we can do better, and the experiences that we've had from every side of the business. Yeah.
Right. I found it interesting when I was looking into the Asian Canadian Film Alliance. Like there were some graphics showing the like lack of representation, and like I think it was Schitt's Creek showed that like there's zero Asian representation basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And not just Asian, right? Like there was no BIPOC representation,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I think if I recall correctly, the writer side, I think there was zero BIPOC representation. But that's what we're just trying to show, right? I think like
Right.
most people, you're not reading the credits at the end of
Hmm.
TV shows, right? So that is easy to really pull over the audience's eyes to really
Exactly.
not know what's happening behind the scenes. We've seen like in front of the camera was the first frontier in terms of getting representation because you can't hide
Hmm.
that, right? Like
Right.
we're watching these actors, we know if there's representation, but behind the scenes has been secondary because it gets missed by the public. They're not aware, right?
Right.
No one's
Exactly.
reading those credits. So our goal with those with the data we were showing is just giving people some insight on what the representation looks like behind the scenes. And we're just pulling public information, so it might not be entirely um, accurate, but it's the best that we can do based on the lack of transparency of a lot of shows, right? Like they're not telling us outright like what the representation looks like,
Hmm.
right? So we can only do our best in terms of giving us, broad strokes look at what that representation looks like behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. It was quite eye-opening for me seeing those different like statistics on that because like you said it's something that the public might not even notice or might not even think to like look for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, and I think as like people who are not filmmakers, and the way that society can like try and push towards these changes is to pay attention to that and push for better representation even behind the camera.
Exactly. And last had openly spoken about it, right?
Hmm.
Once the cat's openly spoken about it, people were like, wait a sec, like it's not representative behind the scenes. This was like news to most of the audience, right?
Yeah, it
Um,
definitely was.
yeah, because nobody's really like going on the computers after they watch the show and just reading through all the credits and making sure, right? Like,
Right. Yeah,
so it's like
exactly.
nobody's doing that kind of proactive work. So it takes a lot more effort to really look into that. So
Hmm.
with our organization, we hope to like reveal some of that hopefully, and not in an antagonistic way. Like we hope like shows will hopefully work with us in terms
Hmm.
of like revealing some of that data. We want to be show who's behind the scenes as accurately as possible. So um, yeah, just so we can make changes and do things better. Right? It's a conversation for us.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I think these types of organizations are so important too, because there's not anybody holding people accountable at the moment for these things unless there's the public calling for it or organizations like this one you've
Exactly.
started.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you said you're holding your first event, or that you said there's it's a panel event, right? So
Yeah.
is that kind of what kind of events people can look out for? Are those panels?
Yeah, I think for the first few things we'll be doing will be mostly panels, but we also hope to have workshops and mentorship programs, which is in the works right now. So
Mm-hmm.
we're in discussions with organizations about that and helping build those things. But mentorship programs and workshops, they take a little bit more time. But I think right now we just want to start and spark that discussion with
Mm-hmm.
the community. But yeah, I think that's what people can look out for at the moment.
That's really exciting, and this is, I guess it is just starting, so it's mainly in Canada. Obviously, it's the Asian Canadian Film Audience or
Yeah,
Alliance, but
yeah,
so.
yeah. I mean, our goals are similar to like that of CAPE and Gold
Mm-hmm.
House in the U.S. We just felt like there wasn't an organization that was advocating for Asians in Canada specifically. So
Right.
um, yeah, so we'd like to do the same type of things, that advocacy work that the U.S. is already doing, because
Mm-hmm.
they're ahead of us in a lot of ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of that progressiveness. So we're working towards that.
Yeah, it's been really exciting to hear. We speak to filmmakers every couple weeks, and the push for the representation has been really great to see. Almost every filmmaker I speak to is really pushing for that representation, and they're doing it, and their films are being rewarded, such as yours. And it's great to see those changes that are really starting to come through.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're optimistic at the end of the day, and
Hmm.
and we're all, we all believe that we can help make that change. So yeah, we're hopeful.
Yeah, and a common theme that I've found is that a lot of filmmakers say that it was a struggle, like growing up, to see their own like their perspective represented on screen. And I was curious to know if you ever had the experience where you did see your like self represented on screen and what that was like.
Yeah, I mean that's probably what pushed me into being a filmmaker. It was
Hmm.
I watched Justin Lin's Better Luck Tomorrow when I
Uh,
was, I think, in my early 20s. Um, yeah, it in a lot of ways it changed my life, right?
hmm.
I before that, I had been consuming obviously predominantly white entertainment, and
Hmm.
when I saw that film, which has an entirely Asian American cast who lived in the suburbs, grew up very similarly to the way I did. It was like shocking to me, because it
Hmm.
was a very bizarre experience. When you're seeing that for the first time as a young person,
Hmm.
your mind almost can't compute it, right?
Right.
You're like, wait a second, this is me on screen. And it was like I had never felt that before, but there
Hmm.
was something really profound about it, right?
Right.
Like feeling seen, and
Hmm.
and that inspired me so much, because I was like, this is, in a lot of ways I felt like this is what I had been missing in terms of that little puzzle piece of my identity, right? Like
Right.
feeling like I belonged in this society, rather than just being an afterthought or an invisible person, right? So
Hmm.
um, yeah, so that sparked my interest in film, and I really wanted to tell stories from my personal experiences,
Hmm.
and hopefully represent others at the same time. So, but yeah, that film specifically is when I had, for the first time, felt like I was seen.
And you said you were in your early 20s when you saw that?
Yeah, I think I was
Wow.
probably like 20 or something. I was like, I think just in university at the time,
Wow.
but yeah, that was the first time.
It's sometimes it's shocking to hear that, like it totally isn't, because that's how the industry is, and it's
Yeah,
something that needs to change, but at the same time it's saddening that it was 20 years something before you were able to experience
yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why, like, I'm hopeful today because I see now the young kids, they have that now.
Hmm.
And in some ways I'm very jealous.
Yeah.
They're much more, I find they're much more confident because
Hmm.
they don't have any question about whether they belong. They're seeing themselves on TV so frequently now, right?
Hmm.
Like when I was growing up in high school and in university, like it was such a rare thing that
Hmm.
I and I think it like genuinely affects your self-esteem as a person,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And I don't think people put enough weight on that how it can really change your growth as a person.
Hmm.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who told me the first time she saw somebody that looked like her on screen, it was like a feeling of like, oh, it's okay that I exist. Like it's okay that I'm
Yeah,
here. Like I don't have to try and assimilate to white culture. Like it's
yeah,
okay that I am who I am.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, just that's what and it's being said over and over again, like the power of representation, why it
Hmm.
matters so much, right?
Hmm.
Just to feel like we belong in this society, right? It's so
Hmm.
important. But yeah,
Yeah, and especially for like little ones growing up, being able to see themselves on screen and not think they're wrong for being who they are.
100%. And I have a newborn myself, so I think about that more and more now. That
Oh yeah, I bet.
yeah, the world is. I want what he sees on TV and books and media and advertising and everything is just that he sees himself. So, but we're getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw you did I saw some of the commercials you've done, and the one that stuck out to me was the Pampers
Oh yeah,
commercial with that baby. Was so cute.
yeah.
But it was such a it's different from what I saw growing up as well. Like I just
Right.
remembered like, oh, it's not just a white baby on the screen.
Exactly, right. Yeah, those are actually my nephews too,
Oh,
so
really? How awesome.
but yeah, no, I hear you,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
it's a I feel like it's a part of media that doesn't get talked about as much is the commercials and things that we just see in advertising all the time as
Exactly.
well.
The magazine racks, the billboards that we see on the street, the bus shelter ads, everything. We're
Hmm.
surrounded by it, right? So, all those things have a cumulative impact if there's a lack of representation, right? You can
Exactly.
imagine what it does to your psyche, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but yeah.
So I know we've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but I did just want to end kind of asking you what your goal is for your audience, like what you want your audience to get out of your film and your work.
I mean, I just hope that, uh, first of all, the themes and ideas will resonate with them
Hmm.
emotionally. But more specifically, they feel like they're being seen.
Hmm.
You know, because the films that I make still are not necessarily mainstream, and the audiences are pretty niche based on the demos. But
Hmm.
I hope it opens up not only those groups but universally, that
Hmm.
everybody can understand each other a little bit better. Regardless of whether they came from that experience or not, right?
Right.
But yeah, that's what I hope will happen.
Great. Yeah, and I'm sure it will. And I know that your White Elephant is currently in the festival circuit, so people can keep an eye out for that on social media and stuff for ways that they can see the film, right?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, just stay tuned. Our Instagram is White Elephant Film. You can check for updates there for our next screening. Yeah, so hopefully it continues, and then there'll be a chance for everybody to watch it.
Yes, I will definitely be keeping an eye out for it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here today. It was really great talking with you.
Thank you so much, Carly. Thanks for having me.
Thank you to our listeners and to Andrew for joining us today. As always, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Go Ahead Tell Me to stay up to date on our next episodes and all exciting things happening here at Go Ahead Tell Me. Talk soon.